Good evening, I'm Marivel Tarouk. We begin with some developing news out of the West End tonight. Several shots were fired in the area of North York near Jane and Shepherd at 9:30 this evening, and just a half hour ago, a man walked into hospital with gunshot wounds. This happened just a few minutes away from a triple shooting last night on Highway 400. One person is dead and two others injured in last night's gunfire. And it is the fifth highway shooting in the Toronto area this year. As Philip Lishanok reports, one of those hurt this time worked to prevent youth violence.
Images of the bullet-riddled car were captured on surveillance video. A man emerges with holes in his clothing. Police say he ran into a gas station and called 911, and they arrived within minutes.
The shooting took place on the 400 southbound.
Police say this was a targeted attack and took place on one of the 400 series highways that carry hundreds of thousands of cars through Canada's most populous region.
There's obviously a lot of potential for other injuries to have occurred if the driver had not been able to make it to this location. Yeah, it's a little bit scary.
Two men, a driver and a passenger, were wounded in the attack. A third, who was in the rear passenger seat, died in hospital. Today, police had the name of the dead man, but little else.
The deceased in this matter is Terrence Actual, AGT-UAL, 28 years, of Toronto.
The two others who were shot have already left hospital. People in the community were shocked to learn one of the survivors is an imam who works with young Muslims trying to prevent violent incidents such as this one.
Now, who is immune now, who will be saved from this? It's very strange. And we don't know what was the cause and who did it, and it was not expected that a person like him and a group that associated with him to be targeted.
This year, there have been 5 shootings on the region's 400 series highways, 2 of them only days apart last month. Philip Lishanok, CBC News, Toronto.
Across town, gun violence was the topic of discussion at an event hosted by a community group called Soul Table. An ER doctor and a professor were brought in to speak about gun control measures. Angelina King has more on what community leaders say is needed to help find solutions.
It's been a devastating year.
And a record-setting one when it comes to the number of shootings in Toronto. According to police statistics, there have been 455 shootings, killing 39 people.
It's not just about criminals, it can happen to anybody.
As a trauma surgeon, Dr. Najma Ahmed sees the devastation of gun violence firsthand. She's part of a group that lobbies for tighter gun laws.
Sometimes we don't care about things because it doesn't affect us directly, but I hope to show people that this is an issue that all Canadians should think about and should all care about.
2 days ago, Public Safety Minister Bill Blair said a list of prohibited guns, including specific makes and models, will be released as quickly as possible, but didn't say exactly when. Ahmed says the Liberals' promise to ban military-style assault weapons is a long time coming. Next, she'd like to see a federal handgun ban.
There are 3,600 guns reported stolen every year.
Professor Wendy Sukier also spoke at tonight's event, urging the audience to do more.
People who support gun control will cry when there's a tragedy. They'll send prayers and flowers, but they don't do anything about it. And that's our problem in Canada today.
But she admits it is complex.
Gun violence is like any disease. You need treatment, you need detection, and you need to prevent the root causes.
Paul Bailey does that work. He says gun control is an important measure, but even with it,
the same issues still exist, right? A lack of opportunity and a lack of support.
He says what's needed now is coordination, a collaborative approach between everyone doing the work, from frontline workers and grassroots organizations to executives and politicians.
Bringing those folks together to have a really strategic, accountable conversation. Bringing those folks together to really talk about how do we coordinate actions to address these issues on the ground.
In hopes of bringing this year's record-setting numbers down in 2020. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
The Special Investigations Unit has been called in after a police shooting in downtown Toronto. The incident unfolded near Queen Street and Spadina Avenue. The SIU says police spotted a stolen car on Queen Street around 1:30 this morning. The driver drove into an alleyway and then made a U-turn, crashing into a police cruiser. Eventually, an officer fired his gun multiple times, injuring the suspect. The man tried to flee on foot, but officers caught up with him. The SIU investigates incidents involving police where there has been death, serious injury, or sexual assault. Ontario provincial police officers are reminding drivers of the dangers of drinking and driving after a 27-year-old man crashed his car and had to be extricated from the vehicle. Police say they were called to Highway 400 and King Road around 5 a.m. after Safir Bhatti drove into a pole. Crews had to cut off the top of the car to get him out safely. Luckily, he only suffered minor injuries. Bhatti is now facing charges of impaired driving. Well, as the temperature keeps dropping, a humanitarian group is aiming to help those who don't have shelter to keep warm by inspiring regular, everyday people to lend a hand.
The cold weather really hits home as we're bundling up in our coats, going into our warm houses and our heated cars. It's a reminder that there are people who are not doing that today, and we're called upon as humans to help.
More than 400 people came out to a venue in North York to learn more about the challenges of those who experience homelessness and poverty, and to discover what they can do as regular citizens, like making sleeping mats and fleece blankets and preparing food packages as well as supply kits. Well, it's time to do our first check of weather. Closing out the weekend, Marta, but starting a new one. So what's in store?
Yeah, well, it's going to be a wet Monday. Unfortunately, for Southern Ontario, it's just going to be a washout. The morning is going to be a little bit rainy, but then in the afternoon and the evening hours, that's when we're going to get those heavier pulses of rain. And you can see that here. It's this Colorado low that's bringing that wet weather in through the south, in through the northeast. You have that snow, and then in through the Nickel Belt, just south of the Nickel Belt, that freezing rain. So Toronto, it's mild though, 5 degrees. For this time of year, it should be 2, so above seasonal for this time of year. And by the afternoon, it's 7 degrees, and that rain icon is still there. Let's talk about that timing. Again, as I mentioned, Monday morning, still that rain. You can see the swath of green throughout. By the afternoon and evening, again, well, it's still raining. So unfortunately, a wet day. And then on Tuesday, we have that chance for that lake effect snow showers. Again, through the southern part of Ontario, 7 degrees in Toronto for Monday, and then just zooming in a little bit closer for the GTA areas all around the GTA. Oakville, 8 degrees, and that rain icon, and then Newmarket, 6 degrees with that rain icon. And as I mentioned, it's going to be a snow event for northeastern Ontario and a rain event for southern Ontario. 5 to 15 millimeters could be seen.
A whole lot of wet. Okay, we'll check back with you in a bit. Thanks, Marta. Well, with this year's early winter, plenty of salt has been piling up on city streets and sidewalks. Environmentalists say it is having a huge impact on our waterways and lakes. But a team at Ryerson University is working on a solution. Taylor Simmons explains.
A bit of December sun brought plenty of people and pups to the beaches this weekend. Also making its way to the water, remnants of past storms, washing off sidewalks and into sewer grates.
This is probably, rough estimation, 5 times what you need to cover this area.
According to the World Wildlife Fund, we're over-salting our roads and walkways.
And we do have these seasonal seas, we're calling them. So in the winter, some of our rivers will have salt as high as oceans in acute areas.
And that salt doesn't go away. Throughout the year, it impacts the soil, plants, and wildlife.
So we're seeing, damage to mussels, to fish, to turtles, and even a lot of research coming out around species that hibernate in our rivers during the winter are really struggling around basically the air they breathe.
The city uses approximately 130,000 tons of salt each winter, saying it's still the most cost-effective and efficient way to keep people safe. They've taken steps to use less, but environmentalists say more can be done.
The campus as a living lab was an excellent way to demonstrate this.
Angela Murphy with Ryerson University says they started a pilot last year creating in-house brine, a mixture of water and salt, applying it to 4 test areas across campus.
The impacts on fresh water were 4 tons less sodium chloride and 2.5 tons less chloride going into our fresh water. There was no increase in liability, no increase in complaints owing to slippage. So there's really no need for people to apply so much road salt.
Ryerson plans to scale up the project this year and study whether it could work in other spots across the city. The World Wildlife Fund is working with them.
Lake Ontario is this beautiful gem. It's really a global gem. Everything we do on the land feeds into our river system and into this lake. And so what we do on the land and on our roads matters.
And while there are lots of quirky solutions to melting ice like pickle brine and beet juice, researchers say those come with their own downsides, and the simplest solution is to just use less salt. Taylor Simmons, CBC News, Toronto.
It is the first of its kind in North America. An environmentally friendly ice trail officially opened today near Yonge and College.
I think the trail is great workout. A couple falls in last year, but this year no falls, so it's looking good so far.
Well, it's good. I mean, you can get more turns.
What have you been doing out here?
Well, skating at least 100 laps.
Wow.
Wow is right. The Barbara Ann Scott Ice Trail is a 5-meter wide skating path in College Park. The trail is the first in North America to use eco-friendly technology. That means its refrigeration system is natural, non-toxic, and does not emit greenhouse gases. The ice trail is named after Canadian figure skater Barbara Ann Scott, an Olympic gold medalist in 1948.
So some were detained, friends of his that were also on that base, as I understand it, and I also was told that some 1 or 2 were filming it. What's unclear is, were they filming it before it began, or was it something where they picked up their phones and filmed it once they saw it unfolding?
Disturbing questions today about Friday's mass shooting at a naval base in Florida and the Saudi Air Force lieutenant responsible. More after the break. An update now on that developing story we told you about earlier. Toronto police are on scene right now at a townhouse complex where they say 8 to 10 shots were fired. Police were called to Jane and Shepherd at around 9:30 p.m. They arrived to find a car on scene with bullet holes. About an hour ago, a man walked into a nearby hospital with gunshot wounds. Police say the man's injuries are not life-threatening, and they are not sure if the two incidents are related. They are looking for a dark-colored sedan. This happened almost 24 hours and just a few minutes drive from a deadly triple shooting last night. One person is dead and 2 injured in that incident after they were shot at on Highway 400. Well, across the border, Friday's mass shooting in Florida was already shocking, but it happened on what should have been a secure military base. But today, there was disturbing new information about the lone Saudi gunman and what he'd been doing ahead of the attack. CBC's Paul Hunter reports.
The procession passed through the streets of Pensacola, Florida today in silence. The 3 dead from Friday's shooting mourned. Some today hailed as heroes for trying to stop the shooter even after they were wounded. Tonight, investigators are focused on the growing questions around all of it.
And I would ask for patience so we can get this right.
Chief among them, why Mohammed al-Shamrani, a Saudi national and member of the Saudi Royal Air Force in the U.S. on official military flight training, walked into a U.S. naval building in Pensacola, Florida Friday, pulled out a handgun and began shooting. Though it's now standard practice, today this sobering early position.
We are, as we do in most active shooter investigations, work with the presumption that this was an act of terrorism.
Friends of the shooter, fellow Saudis also at the base for training, are now confined there and are said to be cooperating fully. But much is unknown. Moments before the shooting began, a Twitter account with a name similar to al-Shamrani posted anti-American messages. In the days and weeks before that, he's said to have traveled back home to Saudi Arabia, where, say some, he may have been radicalized. More recently, a trip to New York. Investigators don't know why. And in Florida, a dinner party in which he and 3 others watched videos of mass shootings. And there's more, with word that as the shooting was being carried out Friday, it was being recorded by one of his friends from that dinner party.
Some were detained, friends of his that were also on that base, as I understand it. And I also was told that some 1 or 2 were filming it. What's unclear is, were they filming it before it began, or was it something where they picked up their phones and filmed it once they saw it unfolding? Today, people pull out their phones and film everything and anything that happens.
In seeking answers to all of it, authorities continue to meet with other students at the base, other Saudis, other friends of the shooter, of which there are said to be many. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Tragedy in India has left 43 people dead, killed when a fire broke out at a factory in Delhi. Witnesses say many victims tried to get out but couldn't. The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg has that story.
As the fire burned, emergency crews struggled just to get to the scene through the narrow streets of Delhi's congested Old Quarter. Inside the multi-story building, panic as people tried to flee but couldn't. Witnesses say they saw people on the roof screaming as the flames climbed. When help arrived, many had to be carried out. Up to 100 people were sleeping inside. This witness says many didn't wake up in time, sleeping because this wasn't just a factory, it was home to many workers, trying to save money while earning about $2 a day.
Police say when they went in, they saw that there was very little ventilation in that room where these laborers were sleeping. There was a staircase that could have possibly been used as an emergency exit, but that was blocked as well.
Many of the laborers were migrants from other parts of India. Their jobs, making all kinds of plastic goods, handbags, backpacks, hats, and other clothing items. In the panic, some of their loved ones say those trapped inside called them, begging for help.
There were no fire alarms, water sprinklers, or even fire extinguishers inside that building. And because it was a manufacturing unit, there was a lot of flammable material inside, things like plastic, cardboard, cloth, and that allowed that fire to spread very quickly.
This isn't the first time we've seen a disaster like this. In 2013, the collapse of a garment building in Bangladesh left more than 1,100 people dead. Employees there were making clothing for well-known brands, including the Canadian-owned Loblaw fashion line Joe Fresh. The disaster sparked global outcry. Officials in this case say a short circuit likely sparked the fire and are promising a thorough investigation. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Winnipeg.
In Hong Kong, the largest anti-government protests since last month's elections took place. The turnout was being watched as a sign of whether the movement still has momentum. Officials say 180,000 took part. Organizers say 800,000. There were chants of fight for freedom and stand with Hong Kong. There was also vandalism at a Bank of China building. 6 months of protests have seen about 900 demonstrations and 6,000 arrests. Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi is headed to The Hague to appear at the UN's top court. She'll defend Myanmar on charges of genocide against its Rohingya Muslim minority. 750,000 of them fled the country in 2017 after a military-led crackdown. Despite international condemnation, the Myanmar government says the crackdown was justified in the face of militant attacks. Genocide is the UN's most serious crime.
Of course. Oh, well, gee. Maria's going to read.
Generations have been raised on that voice. Now, Carol Spinney, the man who played Big Bird on Sesame Street, has died. More on the world's oldest child actor after the break. His face wasn't well known, but his voice and mannerisms are. Carol Spinney, the man who played Big Bird, has died. CBC's Yelena Adzik has more on the legacy Spinney left.
While the Sesame Street character of Big Bird is famous the world over, the actor who breathed life into the puppet from the inside stayed anonymous for most of his life. Today, with the news of his death, many are discovering just how significant Carol Spinney's role was on the show.
Just said higher. Like I talk like this, but somehow it comes out a little different nuance. And here I am.
He is my best friend. Oh, I hope he hasn't gone.
He was there since the first episode in 1969, and for 5 decades that follow, Spinney played Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch. And it was quite the physical challenge. Mr. Spinney was around 5 feet 10, and he had to operate the massive Big Bird puppet from inside with his hands, wires, and even a TV monitor on his chest to help guide him around the studio. Now, although his words were scripted, Spinney got to add personality and heart into the mix.
If he's near tears, I can act that. Or if he would get angry once in a while, like any kid would. He's 6, he still is 6, and I'm 80. So I'm the world's oldest child star.
While helping to nurture and teach millions of children about believing in yourself, speaking your mind, and being kind to others, Carol Spinney went on to receive 6 Daytime Emmys, 2 Grammys, and several Lifetime Achievement Awards. The team behind Sesame Street tweeted out, "His enormous talent and outsized heart were perfectly suited to playing the larger-than-life yellow bird and his lovably cantankerous Grouch. He gave us all permission to be cranky once in a while. In these characters, Carol Spinney gave us something truly special to the world." Spinney once said, "I think most people completely forget what it was like being a kid by the time they grow up." But he never forgot, and today offers the chance for all of us to remember the magic of childhood. Carol Spinney, the actor who brought Big Bird to life, has passed away at the age of 85. Yelena Adzik, CBC News, Toronto.
So many memories for so many of us, Marta. All right, the long-range forecast.
Okay, so just recapping, because I quickly skimmed over this, but this is the rainfall forecast Monday into Tuesday. So 5 to 15 millimeters could be seen in through areas of the GTA. Now let's talk about that long-range forecast. So we have that front sweeping on through. Then you have the chance for some of those lake effect showers, lake effect snow through Tuesday. But really, it's in through Tuesday, Wednesday that things get a little bit cooler. You can see the conditions here. And look at this juxtaposition. Minus 18 in Timmins and 2 degrees in Toronto. And I'll tell you why. Why am I showing you Manitoba? Well, this Arctic air is coming on down, and those wind chill values are for Manitoba, so don't get scared by those numbers, but it is going to spill on into southern Ontario, and we're going to feel a little bit colder than we should. So take a look. Minus 3 in Toronto on Wednesday, minus 3 in Oakville, and then that wind chill, with that wind chill factor, it feels more like minus 10. So much cooler with that Arctic air that's helping to cool things down. And just a quick look at that 7-day forecast for Toronto, again starting the week off rainy, and then by Wednesday it's pretty chilly there, and Saturday looks like we have some showers as well.
What a turn. Okay, thanks, Marta. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca. Have a great night, everyone.